Was all the equipment that would be used in the search and rescue operations in a full state of readiness, such as computer systems, software, radio, communications, vessel assets?
Yes.
What are the Coast Guard procedures, what Coast Guard procedures will cover the planning and execution of subsea search and rescue operations?
Well, like I said, there's a checklist for that you go through, and you know, in many respects, the initial actions are the same, right? We talked about, you know, we put assets on scene because, again, we had to operate under the assumption that there's a possibility that the Titan was on the surface. So that planning, you know, we're calculating the set and the drift through computer models that we have, and coming up with search patterns to continue to search the surface. At the same time, we were conducting subsurface searches with really being driven by the data that we were receiving from the experts in the Unified Command.
How do those QRC code, the quick response cards, how are they developed?
So they are living documents. I think is probably the most important piece of that, right? We, as technology changes, as the environment changes, those are updated. There's always, so they exist, but there's always an opportunity to change those, and so they're developed using our experience and expertise, but again, they continue to grow and develop as things change.
And yeah, I know you kind of went into this a little bit, but at the time of the incident, did the Coast Guard maintain a list of resources that might be contacted to assist in underwater search activities, or did that come from the company who maintains like a list of available resources?
Well, we didn't have a list of necessarily available ROV resources, but what we did have is, I mean, one of the first places we reached out to was to the United States Navy, and then we started to work from there.
You had mentioned that OceanGate didn't have a rescue plan. Can you kind of go into that? How did you know they didn't have a plan?
Well, if they did, it was never presented to us in the Unified Command.
When did you become aware of reports of noises being detected on sonar buoys in the vicinity of the search location? Can you kind of expand on the details of if you received reports of noises?
Sure. Really, as soon as the P3 started flying, so Monday the 19th, and we immediately were, so a couple things we did there. We were investigating the noises, both with the polar prints and their sonar capability, obviously with additional P3 flights, and then we were gathering all of that data over the course of really the next 24 hours or so, and we packaged that data and we gave it to the United States Navy, and they analyzed it. And I believe by, I don't know, I can't remember the exact date, either Tuesday, the 20th, or Wednesday, we received a definitive answer from the United States Navy that, two pieces of information that they told us. One was that the sounds were not coming in regular intervals, as was being reported. There was a lot of reports of 30-minute intervals. The Navy looked at that data and said that that wasn't the case, and two, they were 100% certain that it was not human in nature or knocking on a hull of a vessel. And as soon as we received that information, I personally shared that with the family before we released it in the media, with the families, I'm sorry.
How did receiving that report affect your search and rescue decisions?
Well, it's one piece of data, right? There were about 1,000 pieces of data coming into us. We were also very, very close to having the 6,000-meter ROVs on scene at that point, and we knew exactly what we needed to do, and that was to get the pelagic ROV on scene early Thursday morning and get to the last known position. So we continued to work as vigorously as we could to reach that goal.
Were you ever told by crew members or employees of OceanGate on board the Polar Prince that they felt or heard something around the time they lost communications with the Titan?
No, that was never passed to the Unified Command.
Did you only direct the surface search and rescue assets, or did you also direct the underwater search and rescue assets such as the ROVs?
Unified Command was directing both. We were providing that information to the on-scene assets on where to focus those underwater searches. Again, being limited at the 3,000 meter, we were doing everything we could, working with the Polar Prince and OceanGate under that theory that there was a possibility they could be somewhere in the water column, which, as you can imagine, that's an incredibly difficult search area.
And you kind of mentioned it, you start with the last known position. Is that kind of what you did to direct those with the decisions you made with the Unified Command to put the ROV down there? You just kind of started with the last position? Do you just kind of send it straight down, search patterns? How does that work?
Well, yes. However, we were working with the team really from Woods Hole and the other subsurface experts to take in some additional data, and they gave us a location which was accurate.
When exactly did the Unified Command stand up, and who made the decision to stand up the Unified Command?
Yeah, so Rear Admiral Mauger, the SAR coordinator, made that decision, and it was on Monday the 19th.
And you had talked a lot about subject matter experts in the Unified Command. Who else was part of the Unified Command?
I think I gave a full list there. I mean, from the United States Navy to the Canadian Air Force, the Canadian Coast Guard, the team from Woods Hole. I'm happy to provide a detailed list to the board. I think I named just about everybody that was, but I'm happy to provide that for the record.
And was OceanGate part of the Unified Command?
They were. I mean, the Polar Prince, I think, yes, OceanGate was part of the Unified Command.
And did they have a representative, either virtually or present in the Unified Command?
They did, not present. The representative was aboard the Polar Prince.
Do you know who that representative was?
It was Kyle Bingham.
Was the U.S. Coast Guard aware that submersible operations with passengers on board were taking place near the Titanic wreck site on June 18, 2023?
So I will not speak for the first Coast Guard district was not aware.
Okay, thank you. Is there Coast Guard guidance regarding notification of submersible operations within a Coast Guard search and rescue area of responsibility?
I don't know.
In your professional opinion, do you think advance notifications of such activities to the Coast Guard would aid in search and rescue operations?
I don't know necessarily if it would aid in search and rescue operations. I think you want to have a general sense of what's happening in your area of responsibility. In my current role as the sector commander and captain of the port, if these operations were going on somewhere in my captain of the port zone, I would want to be aware of that.
And when did you learn that you were no longer in the search and rescue mode or the distress phase, and the Titan was a complete loss and all lives on board were lost?
It was on Thursday morning when the Odysseus arrived on scene. The first piece of they discovered the tail cone first, and then as we continued to find additional debris, it became apparent that it had been a total loss.
And who made the next of kin notifications?
I did.
Did you feel that you were provided all available information from OceanGate during the search?
Well, I mean, hindsight's 20/20. We certainly, there is so much information that's been discussed over the past 2 weeks. I think it's a valuable point to say we didn't have a fraction of that in any search and rescue case, maybe they start off like that, right? There's a saying that we use that the initial reports are always wrong and they're late. And in the fog of that response, things change. So we certainly didn't have the level of information that's been brought forth.
Thank you, Captain.